I paid off my parents' debt in secret, but my brother took all the credit until I showed the statement. They never asked for help, not even when their voices cracked under the weight of mounting despair. I watched it all unfold from the sidelines, those tired faces worn down by years of sacrifice, whispers floating between rooms after midnight, heavy with dread. Late notices stuffed into drawers, final warnings quietly torn and buried under junk mail. The desperation never made it to their lips, but it lived in every glance they exchanged. I knew what they were too proud to say. And so, without waiting to be asked, I moved. I didn't need a grand moment, no big revelation or confetti-strewn announcement, just a quiet decision, sealed in silence and executed with precision. It started with the house, the mortgage they'd fought to hold on to even as the interest quietly strangled them. I covered the full balance in one clean sweep. The bank called to confirm, and I gave them strict instructions not to contact my parents. Then came the loans. The small one they used to help my college tuition years ago, the one they'd never let me know still haunted them, and the larger one they'd taken out to keep the lights on during Dad's medical scare. I cleared them both. Not in pieces. All at once. Then I tracked down the mountain of credit card debt. Maxed out balances spread across 5 cards, each used to cover essentials and patched repairs, emergency grocery hauls, utility bills that were always just out of reach. I paid them in full. Not even a minimum payment left behind. I didn't need a pat on the back. I didn't want their gratitude. I just wanted to see them breathe easier. To see my mother sleep without fear of the mailbox. To see my father sit without his fingers clenching around the phantom weight of financial ruin. No one knew. Not my friends. Not my colleagues. Not even the girl I'd been seeing for months. It wasn't a gesture for applause. It was mine to carry. Mine to give. And I was content knowing they were safe again, even if they never knew why. But then he spoke. It was a Sunday dinner, the kind we hadn't had in months, maybe years. My brother showed up late, the way he always did, talking loudly, arms wide, his smile rehearsed to a shine. The table buzzed with small talk, laughter layered with non-alcoholic wine, until he cleared his throat and said it, like it was nothing, like he was reading a grocery list. I handled it, took care of everything. Mom, Dad, you don't have to worry about the debt anymore. He said it with a smirk that curled at the edges, that self-satisfied gleam he wore like cologne. I stared at him, not breathing, watching as their eyes widened with astonishment. And then joy. My mother's hand went to her mouth. My father sat straighter, blinking at him as if he was seeing his son for the first time. "You did?" she asked, voice cracking. "All of it?" "Every cent," he said smoothly, nodding like he was giving a press conference. "Didn't want to say anything before it was done. Just wanted you both to be okay." They wept. They actually wept. Called him a blessing, a hero. Said they'd never forget what he did. He basked in it, let it pour over him like a second baptism. I sat there in silence, feeling the weight of my restraint press against my ribs like iron bands. I waited, told myself it didn't matter who got the credit, that what mattered was their peace, their relief. But then he winked at me. He winked, as if to say, "I know, and I don't care." That's when I knew this wasn't just ego. It was theft. Theft of something sacred. I had bled my savings dry, put off replacing my broken-down car, passed on promotions because the commute was cheaper. I had eaten instant noodles for months. I'd done it all so they wouldn't drown. And here he was, dancing on dry land, claiming he'd built the lifeboat himself. I didn't speak that night. I let the celebration echo. I let them toast him and heap praise like confetti over his empty hands. But when the night ended and I lay awake staring at the ceiling, I made a decision. The kind you don't walk back from. The following Sunday we met again, this time at our parents' place. Less formal. Still warm. Still familiar. But there was a tension in the air, a quiet hum I had carried with me. Dinner passed. Conversation drifted. Then I stood. I didn't speak in anger. My voice was level, calm, focused. "There's something I need to show you." I pulled out the manila folder. Nothing fancy, just clean documentation. One by one, I laid the pages out on the table. Bank statements, transaction logs, wire confirmations, proof, dates, amounts, where it came from, where it went, every debt, every payment. My name, not his, not once. The room changed. The warmth evaporated. Silence dropped like a guillotine. My mother picked up the papers with trembling hands. My father looked at the numbers, his brow furrowing deeper with each line. No one spoke for a long time. My brother froze. His mouth moved, forming a lie that couldn't find breath. I didn't look at him. I watched my parents, watched understanding flood their eyes, watched disbelief shift into realization, and then something else, something heavier. The kind of shame that doesn't come with yelling or confrontation, just silence, raw and open. They looked at me, no words, just eyes filled with something I hadn't seen in years. Gratitude, regret, grief. Still, I didn't ask for anything. I didn't demand acknowledgement. I didn't need a performance of guilt or apology. I just nodded and collected the folder, stacking the papers carefully, methodically, as if closing a chapter. Then I sat back down and finished my drink. He didn't say another word. Not that night, not after. And while the silence between us grew louder, I didn't mind. Because the truth, once it's shown, doesn't need volume. It just needs light. The next morning was quiet, but not in the way peace feels. It was the kind of silence that settles when something has fractured, when the surface still looks whole, but everyone knows the break is there, deep, splitting, raw. I didn't expect a call, and none came. Not from my brother, not from my parents. It was as if that folder, those documents, had pulled a veil back that no one knew how to close again. I went about my day with a strange calmness, the kind that settles in after something irreversible. At work, I answered emails, took meetings, responded with nods and half smiles, but underneath it all, I was waiting for someone in that house to face the truth outside the numbers. 2 days later, the call finally came, but it wasn't my parents. It was him. The brother who had stood in their living room and spun a fantasy out of my sacrifices. He didn't ask how I was. He didn't apologize. He started with a question that told me everything I needed to know about where this was going. Why would you embarrass me like that? I didn't answer right away. Not because I didn't have words, but because the weight of his delusion was heavier than I expected. He continued before I could speak. You could have pulled me aside, talked to me first. But no, you made a scene. You humiliated me in front of Mom and Dad. I leaned back in my chair, phone pressed loosely against my ear. His voice carried that familiar tone, half defiant, half pleading, like a kid caught lying but still trying to reshape the narrative. I listened, letting him go on about betrayal, pride, and how I looked like a martyr trying to prove something. When I finally spoke, my words were sharp and deliberate. I didn't do it for applause. I didn't expose you to hurt you. I did it because you stood there and took credit for something you didn't touch. Not 1 cent, not 1 call, not 1 ounce of the burden, and you didn't just let them believe it. You wanted them to believe it. That's not pride. That's theft. He didn't speak after that, just silence, then a click as the line went dead. That conversation became the pivot. After it, everything shifted in the quiet ways families change, subtle, restrained, but permanent. The next time I visited my parents, I found my father waiting on the porch. He stood when I stepped out of the car, didn't speak at first, just nodded, and pulled me into a brief, firm hug. It was the first time I felt the weight of his gratitude without words. Inside, my mother had baked a cake. She hadn't done that in years, not without a birthday or a holiday. She didn't say thank you outright, but she hovered near me through dinner, making sure my plate was never empty, that my glass was full. She laughed at my stories, asked about work, and listened, truly listened, like I'd come back from war. But his chair was empty. He hadn't shown up. Not that night, not the next week. When he finally did return, it wasn't to explain or apologize. He arrived at another dinner, unannounced, as if nothing had happened. Walked in, smiling, greeting our parents with an air of defiance, like he was daring someone to call him out. He gave me a nod, forced, tight, insincere, and then sat down across from me without acknowledging the shift that had occurred. Everyone played along. That's how families work sometimes. They patch over holes with routine. They dress silence in civility and pretend discomfort is just a change in weather. But I watched him. He was different now. His confidence was brittle. He no longer told stories with the same ease. No more loud boasts. No more showmanship. When our parents asked questions about work or his life, he gave short, vague answers, careful not to invite deeper conversation. I realized then that the damage wasn't just to his image, it was to the illusion he had built his whole life around, and he knew it was crumbling. Behind closed doors, the unraveling continued. I started getting messages from old friends, mutual acquaintances, people who had heard his version of things over the years. He'd spun tales not just about the debt, but about everything. My job, my relationships, even my past. He had painted me as the distant one, the self-absorbed sibling chasing money and recognition while he stayed close to home, taking care of the family. The truth wasn't just about the bank statements. It was bigger than that. He'd built a narrative where he was the son who showed up, who carried the emotional weight, who deserved praise for things no one verified. And when the numbers came out, the story collapsed. One day I got a message from a mutual friend, someone we both knew well in college. She sent a screenshot of a message he'd sent her trying to discredit me again. He just wanted attention. That's why he made it public. He's always had to be the hero. I didn't reply. I didn't need to, because she added her own message beneath it. I know the truth now. I'm sorry I ever believed him. Piece by piece, his foundation eroded. But he didn't stop. He couldn't. People like him don't surrender quietly. They adapt. They scheme. A few weeks after that message, I got an email from one of our distant relatives, someone I hadn't spoken to in over a year. It was a forwarded message. My brother had tried to reach out, spinning a new tale, that I had only paid off the debt to make him look bad, that it was a power move, that I resented his closeness with our parents and used money to drive a wedge. Again, I didn't respond. I just kept moving, because I wasn't going to play his game. But my parents noticed. My father asked about it one evening while we were replacing the old fence in their backyard. "Why doesn't he just say he was wrong?" he asked, not looking at me. Hammer paused mid-swing. "Why won't he just admit it?" I shrugged, not because I didn't care, but because I'd spent too long trying to understand that question myself. "He doesn't know how," I said. To him, admitting he lied is worse than lying again. My father didn't respond, just went back to work. More careful this time, like each nail driven into the wood was a thought he couldn't put into words. Things didn't explode. There was no big confrontation. What happened instead was slow deterioration, a quiet undoing. My parents didn't cut him off, but the warmth dimmed. The calls became fewer, the invitations rarer. They didn't say it out loud, but the trust had shifted. One night, I overheard my mother talking to a neighbor. She was explaining the story again, not the lie, but the truth, the real version. She didn't say my name directly, but her voice held pride, the kind that isn't loud but settled deep in the bones. That was when I realized the truth didn't need to scream. It just needed to survive, and it had. But that didn't mean it was over, because my brother wasn't done. He started showing up more suddenly, at family events, uninvited gatherings, birthdays he hadn't acknowledged in years. Every time, he came with a gift in hand, with rehearsed smiles, with stories he tried to plant like seeds in dry soil. He was trying to rebuild, but something in the way our parents looked at him had changed. Not cold, not cruel, just clearer, like they were finally seeing the whole of him, not just the parts he wanted them to see. One evening, after he left early from yet another awkward dinner, my mother sat beside me and said quietly, "You were always the quiet one. We thought that meant distant. Turns out you were just the one carrying the weight." She didn't elaborate. She didn't need to. We both knew what she meant. My brother, for all his noise, had never lifted what mattered, and now, with the spotlight gone, he was just another man trying to be seen for something he never earned. The story wasn't finished. He wasn't done trying, and I wasn't done watching. 3 months passed. Long enough for the novelty of the truth to wear off, but not long enough for its consequences to settle quietly. My brother's visits grew more erratic. He appeared when he thought he could salvage control, but the room no longer bent around him. Our parents had stopped asking about his stories. They listened politely, nodded when he spoke, but their eyes never stayed on him the way they used to. I think that was what cut him the most, realizing that his performance had lost its audience. It all came to a head on a Tuesday evening. I had come over to fix the back porch light. Simple task, something I could have done in silence and left, but as I pulled the ladder from the garage, I heard the front door open. I knew that walk. His pace always had a rhythm to it, fast, insistent, like the world owed him space. He came around the side of the house, stopped when he saw me, and gave a look that tried to be casual but didn't land. "I didn't know you were here," he said. "You never ask," I replied. He smiled. Not out of amusement, more like an attempt to soften something that had already hardened. "Can we talk?" he asked. I stepped down from the ladder, met his eyes, and waited. He looked unsure. "I've been thinking," he started, "and I know I messed up. But you didn't have to blow it up the way you did. You could have just let it go." That was his apology. Not regret for what he did, just a complaint about how it turned out. I let him speak because I wanted to see where it would go. I just wanted them to see me the way they see you now. For once, he added. And that was the truth. Not remorse, not accountability, just resentment. I crossed my arms, gave him nothing. "They always looked at you like the responsible one, the smart one. You always did things right. I was the one they expected to clean up after. So when I saw the chance to finally be the one who fixed something, I took it." I asked one question. "And you thought lying was fixing it?" He didn't answer. I went back to the ladder, but he wasn't done. "I lost control, I know that. But this distance, I can't take it anymore." I looked down at him. "You created it, not me." His face shifted. No longer defensive, not quite ashamed, somewhere in between. "I want to make it right," he said. "How?" I asked. He didn't have an answer. That was the problem. He wanted forgiveness without action, without cost. But the damage he caused wasn't just about the lie. It was about what it revealed, about how he saw me, how he saw our parents, how little he thought truth mattered when ego was on the line. I finished the repairs. He didn't follow me back inside. At dinner that weekend, he showed up again. But this time, he came with a prepared speech, his last attempt to reclaim some part of the story. He stood up at the table, clearing his throat like it was a stage. "I lied," he said. "You all know that. I took credit for something I didn't do because I wanted to feel important. I wanted to be seen, but I wasn't honest. And I'm sorry." He didn't look at me. He looked at them. My parents didn't interrupt. He continued. "I can't undo what I said, but I want to do better, if you'll let me." Then he sat down. Silence followed, not the heavy kind, just thoughtful. My mother reached across the table and placed her hand over his. My father nodded once, slowly. It wasn't an absolution, but it was a start. After dinner, as the plates were cleared and the kitchen buzzed with small talk, my brother pulled me aside. "Was that enough?" "No," I said. "But it was honest." He nodded. Didn't argue. That was enough for me. The next few weeks felt different. Not perfect, not entirely healed, but different. He started showing up, not for appearances, but to help. He helped Dad patch a leaking pipe, took Mom's car in for service. He asked questions he never asked before. Not about being praised, just about being present. It wasn't grand, but it was real. One night, our parents sat me down. No preamble, just direct words. "We didn't know how much you gave. Not just the money, everything. And we should have seen it sooner." I nodded, didn't need more. "We love you. We're proud of you." That was the first time they said it without comparing me to him. Without making it about roles or expectations. Just truth, clean and whole. The debt had been paid long ago. Now the rest was being settled. Not with interest, not with receipts, but with clarity. In the months that followed, the balance in our family began to rebuild, not as it was before, but as something more stable. My brother didn't erase what he'd done, but he stopped pretending it hadn't happened. He let the truth stand beside him. And with time, it stopped casting a shadow. It became part of the story, not the shame, and I finally breathed. Not because I won, but because I didn't have to carry it alone anymore.